Jeffrey Epstein's notorious home on a private Caribbean island where underage girls and young women were trafficked and sexually abused. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released these photos as well as videos they say have not been made public before. One of the images shows what appears to be a dentist chair in one room with masks on a wall. Another shows a blackboard with some words scribbled on it: power, deception, plots, political. There's also this video showing the manicured grounds of the estate with palm trees and winding paths and a large pool. The Department of Justice has 16 days before they have to release documents related to its investigation of Epstein, as required by the bill that Congress passed and President Trump recently signed into law. Now, we learned today that Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is planning to file a petition that asking a judge to release her from prison. She's serving a 20-year sentence for her sex trafficking conviction. Joining us tonight, California Congressman Ro Khanna, member of the Oversight Committee, who, along with Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, led the fight to pass that bill, forcing the release of the Epstein files. So, Congressman, do these video images fill in any blanks for you, raise any new questions? I'm wondering what stands out to you.
Well, the dentist chair was concerning to me. Obviously, we need to know the facts, but what we need to know is, were underage girls abused on that chair? What happened there? What we do know from the survivors is there are many such photos in the Epstein files. We know that from the survivors and their lawyers. All of those need to be released. Every file, every photo, every interview memorandum, while protecting victims, need to be released by federal law in the next 16 days.
And do you expect, do you know what to expect in 16 days in terms of what level of redaction there's going to be? Have you gotten any word from the Department of Justice how they are handling this?
Congressman Massie and I have requested to meet with Attorney General Pam Bondi or someone on her team handling the investigation. So far, we have not heard back. We're going to continue to pursue it. Of course, Congressman Massey is on the Judiciary Committee, so Pam Bondi will be coming before that committee. But now every person at the Justice Department who does not cooperate in releasing these files would be violating federal law, that they would be subject to federal penalties. So we expect that there will be a release, and we're going to continue to fight to make sure that it is transparent and complete.
Your committee says it's also received about 5,000 documents in response to subpoenas to J.P. Morgan, Deutsche Bank for Epstein's financial records. I don't know how much of those the committee's been able to review, but do they, what do you hope to find in those documents? Does anything connect any dots for you?
Well, the committee is going through that. There are a lot of documents, but the big question is, how is Jeffrey Epstein, a former school teacher, worth $500 million? Who is funding him? Why are people giving him this money? And what was he doing for this money? Those are things that we're going to get from these documents. As you know, Senator Wyden has been investigating this in the Senate for over a year. That is going to be critical to understanding who all was involved.
We've talked about Ghislaine Maxwell planning to ask a judge to release her from prison according to a new court filing. What do you think the chances of that actually are, given the unknowns of, the interview she had with President Trump's former personal attorney, who's now, a high level of the Department of Justice? What do you think is going to happen there?
It would be a slap in the face of the survivors. Anderson, as you imagine, I've gotten to know some of these survivors. I've spent time with them. When you mention Ghislaine Maxwell's name, they have a trauma and an anger. This is someone who abused them. This is someone who facilitated their abuse. The fact that we're even discussing any leniency for her or letting her out of jail is frankly disgusting. And the survivors themselves get so emotional when people bring up Maxwell.
A House Oversight Committee spokesperson earlier today criticized Democrats on the committee, your committee, for releasing these videos and photos, saying, quote, "It is odd that Democrats are once again releasing selective information as they have done before." I'm wondering what your response to that is.
Let's release it all. That's what Massie and my bill does. If you don't think there's anything there, get the files out. If you think it's selective, get the files out. Let's finally get the information out there, most importantly because of the 1,000 survivors, and that's what they want. And so we end this kind of blame game and name calling. Let's just get it all out there in the next 16 days.
All right, Congressman Rokon, I appreciate it. Thank you. For more on this, Sarah Fitzpatrick, a staff writer for The Atlantic, an investigative reporter, joins me. Also with me, independent journalist Tara Palmieri, host of the Tara Palmieri Show podcast. Appreciate both of you being with us. Sarah, what do you see as the significance of these images?
I think it's very significant on a couple fronts. One, I think that we are, for the first time, seeing inside of Jeffrey Epstein's home. It's the place where some of the most horrific sex crimes occurred, and some real, criminal conduct. But I think what's important for me as an investigative reporter is that these images we've never seen inside, and they correspond and speak to what so many of the women who were abused on this island, how they described the rooms, how they described the layout. It just gives them additional credibility for the kind of really horrific things that they have described, not just to journalists, but also to members of law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia Giuffre, who has died, had said that some of the worst abuse she suffered occurred on this island.
Absolutely. It was a place that was hard to get to. You had to get on a helicopter to get to the island, or a boat. It was specifically designed to be a place for pleasure for the powerful and for the weak to be stranded there, to the point that Sarah Ransom, one of the survivors, tried to swim off even though the current is quite severe, and she was willing to risk her life. That was how terrible the experience was on the island. And we know that Virginia was severely raped on this island. I also would have wished that Virginia was alive today. I would have asked her all about that dentist chair and what that meant and what that was, because to me there's something sadistic about it.
It's kind of I mean, it's bizarre to have a dentist chair in somebody's private home.
Also, just no one wants to go to the dentist. There's something dark about it. The masks on the wall. There's a leeriness to it all. It's almost like you're walking through a crime scene. I mean, you are walking through a crime scene. When I see the rooms, they're kind of hotel type rooms, could be for anybody. It has just
I mean, there's kind of
energy.
no personality other than sort of creepiness to these things. Otherwise, there is this sort of anonymity to it, of sort of anonymous hotel room somewhere in the Caribbean.
Exactly, and it's interesting. You could even see from the picture of the cameras. I mean, there are cameras everywhere. They're being recorded, you could say, for security, but also what I had heard from the survivors, that they believe that they were always being recorded there. Even the statues are weird, like the one by the pool. And I think it's important for us to have this documentary evidence, especially when you have the President of the United States saying, this is a hoax, it's a hoax. Seeing is believing. See the place where he lived. And this isn't all just some wealth porn. This is a very perverted man, and you can see it from the way that he lived.
Sir, I mean, it is going to be incredible to see what happens with Ghislaine Maxwell, given the interview she gave at Todd Blanche, the weirdness of that interview, and the statements that the president has made repeatedly when asked about this repeatedly, not ruling out automatically. Of course, I would not, pardon or give clemency to a convicted sex offender.
Absolutely. I think that speaks to the fact that there are still so many unanswered questions, but it is a pattern that is so unprecedented in terms of how the Department of Justice normally runs. And I think that speaks to how this case under multiple administrations has been just really mishandled, and that has fueled the public interest. And one thing I think that's really important about these photos is that you mentioned that it's kind of creepy and it looks almost sterile. That is because these photos were not taken until well after Epstein had died. This was part of the Virgin Islands investigation. And so there was a lot of time for things to be cleared out, for evidence to be potentially destroyed or altered. And so I think it's important that and that's a really important question that I hope we learn in these Epstein files, whatever comes of them, is it's our understanding that there was really never any law enforcement activity, that there were never leads that could have been followed, that there was never surveillance. There were all sorts of things that my sources wanted to do in early investigations into Jeffrey Epstein that they were prevented from doing, which would have yielded really important evidence. And so I think it's important to know that, yes, these images are there, but these are very sanitized from what could have been.
And Tara, I mean, one of the things that's so, one of the many chapters in this horrific saga is that the people who are now in power, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, the FBI, were the ones leading the charge when it was a Democratic administration, and they were portraying this as this is, Democrats and a cabal, and sort of linking it with QAnon and that whole conspiracy theory. And now that they are the ones in charge, for them to be the ones suddenly changing their tune and saying, oh, there's actually nothing to see, it's just another bizarre element of like, why have they suddenly changed their tune?
It's because they know it's political. And it always was political, but for them it was a Democratic cabal until they woke up and realized that actually at the time when Jeffrey was committing his worst crimes, the president was also a Democrat at that time. And it was a cudgel. They never looked at it in terms of the victims and what it meant for them. And they pulled on the heartstrings of American people, feeling like they were the underdogs not being heard and the powerful elites were getting away with crimes. Turns out they are, but those powerful elites are now in power. So I think, I hope that we find out so much more. I can't believe December 19th it will finally happen, and I hope that they don't use some sort of workarounds with these SDNY investigations to withhold information, selectively choosing what to see or what not to see. But I think it will bring I hope it brings some peace to a lot of the women.
What are you doing?
American troops. That is the conclusion from one of the most damning reports from the Pentagon Inspector General in history. And this report stems from an extensive investigation into the Defense Secretary's decision to share sensitive war plans on a group chat that actually turned out to include a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, Hegseth revealed in that chat the exact times the fighter jets would launch, where they were going to fly, when they would hit their targets, so what the targets were, obviously, meaning that the American pilots of those jets were at risk. It is a rare conclusion about a sitting Secretary of Defense. And news of this report comes as questions are mounting about Hegseth's control at the Pentagon and his competence after a second strike on an alleged drug boat. That strike killing 2 survivors who were reportedly clinging to the wreckage. Now, tonight, Trump was forced to say that he would release the video of that second strike.
You released video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves what happened?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem.
Now, of course, Trump has talked similarly about the Epstein files, his taxes, his MRI, but this time might be different. Maybe Trump thinks it will help Hegseth. It's unclear, but this is the video that Hegseth now claims that he himself did not watch live. He says now he didn't see it. Too many other things to do. That, of course, was after he had boasted originally on Fox News that he had watched the entire thing live back in September. Now, the Washington Post reports that if the video of the blast that killed the 2 survivors on September 2nd were made public, people would be horrified, said one person who watched the actual live feed. But it comes as more people, including staunch conservatives, are suggesting Hegseth could be guilty of an actual war crime. Listen to his former Fox News colleague, Andrew Napolitano, who now works at the Trump-friendly station Newsmax.
Everybody along the line who did it, from the Secretary of Defense to the Admiral to the people who actually pulled the trigger, should be prosecuted for a war crime for killing these 2 people.
Right, that's not mincing words. It wasn't mincing words at all. And then there's the brutal headline from conservative columnist George Will, who wrote, "A sickening moral slum of an administration," and then went on to write, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth seems to be a war criminal without a war. An interesting admission. Okay? And then listen to Republican Senator Rand Paul, who said Hegseth is either lying or incompetent yesterday.
There is a question of the legality of bombing people who are shipwrecked or incapacitated. I frankly think it's absolutely illegal.
This may be why the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, who voted to confirm Hegseth, is now refusing to say whether or not he has confidence in Trump's defense secretary.
Do you have confidence in him? Would you say that? Can you say if you do? Thanks for your time.
And while all these questions swirl around Hegseth, who, of course, calls himself the Secretary of War, he is refusing to sit down for tough interviews, turning down multiple interview requests from CNN and others. But an interview was released last night, which appears to have been taped before news of this whole second strike imbroglio. And in that conversation, which was with Stephen Miller's wife, Katie, Hegseth talks about whether he'd let Stephen Miller babysit his kids and what he eats for breakfast.
As a director of finance, I'm managing 15 and 20 contracts a month. With that,
who would I trust to babysit my kids?
This can only be another member of the cabinet?
Only another member of the cabinet? Oh, I mean, not your husband or Marco.
Who would you trust to do your grocery shopping?
Well, Bobby Kennedy. Nice. I have the same breakfast every morning: bacon, eggs, and sausage, and something with meat at lunch, and then whatever she makes for dinner. Meatballs are really, really good. Homemade meatballs with a little sausage in there.
Mm-hmm. Kristen Holmes is out front live outside the White House. Kristen, is the president as confident about Hegseth in private as he claims to be in public right now?
Well, I think you need to look at that White House statement, because the last line of the statement from Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the president stands by Pete Hegseth, and that was a calculated decision. Think about all of the stories that we have put forward saying that there is doubt in certain members of the cabinet, where we have not gotten that kind of a statement back, in which they say this is fake news, but then kind of let it go. They have made a calculated decision. In this instance, remember, this was just in response to this Inspector General report, that they are going to stand by Hegseth. And there is some thought that goes into that. The reason is they expended so much political and personal capital, so many of them, to get him across the finish line. It's going to take a lot for them to try and get rid of him, or to get rid of him. But one thing to keep a note here, you mentioned this, when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to this second strike, we are hearing louder and louder calls from Republicans as well as Democrats. And tomorrow we are going to see the Admiral Bradley, who essentially kind of seems as though he has been somewhat of a scapegoat. We'll see if that is how it plays out on the Hill, talking to senators. And there's going to be a lot of questions about what Hegseth's role was. And then you're going to hear from those senators again. And one thing is clear, if the calls get louder and louder, and if they get too loud, it is likely the White House will start to at least have to have these conversations with these senators, not just standing by Hegseth. So we'll see how this all plays out once you actually have that admiral talking to those senators. But again, we've been down this road before, Aaron. They expended a lot of capital on Pete Hegseth. They're going to keep him. As of now, they're saying they're standing by him.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. And out front now, Democratic Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan. She's on the Armed Services and Intel committees. A lot to ask you about this evening, Congresswoman. This Inspector General report, though, a pretty incredible thing to have come out, right? To say that a Secretary of Defense had risked endangering the lives of American troops. It comes out as Hegseth is also now being criticized by some of those Republicans and conservatives that I was just sharing a few moments ago. Do you think that Hegseth at this moment is actually in danger of losing his job as Defense Secretary?
First of all, thank you for having me. And the answer to your question is I sure hope he's in danger, because from the moment he was confirmed, I believe that he was incompetent and a liar all combined. And now I hope that people are starting to see through all of the things that are unfolding, whether it's Venezuela or the results of the IG's report, just how hazardous this particular Secretary of Defense is, and how much he puts the men and women in uniform in harm's way, and how much as a consequence our national security is in danger.
So the New York Times just a few moments ago reported, and we were just going through this, that Hegseth had actually approved contingency plans if there were survivors of the strikes, which said, the contingency plan said, that the military would attempt to aid anyone who appeared helpless or out of the fight. So then you would say, well, then why did the second strike come in when two people are clinging for their lives to the side of the boat? Well, the contingency plan says the military would try to kill survivors if they took what was deemed a hostile act. And apparently officials are saying that one of the survivors, or telling the Times, that one of the survivors radioed for help. And then Admiral Bradley ordered the second strike. As I've laid that out to you in terms of a timeline, in terms of the contingency plan itself, would that in any way possibly exonerate Hegseth?
I don't believe so, and one of the things I was interested in, and is new information to me, is that you mentioned that President Trump is able and willing to release the second tape. I'm glad that that is the case and look forward to that. But I also look forward to the audio as well being released to understand, and the video within the room itself, to understand who was there, who was listening, what was being said. All of those things, including the details that you just laid out, need to come to light, need to be part of the oversight process. Whether they are done by the Intelligence Committee or the Armed Services Committee, the American public deserves the oversight that the Congress would allow us to provide.
Embrace the journey.
involving the president and others. And it went so strangely that the people around Trump were sort of stunned into silence. Trump looked confused. The people in the Oval Office looked confused. Trump really struggling even to finish a sentence here. And Donald Trump continually trying to minimize this completely corrupt bribery project called The Ballroom, in which various actors and grifters are donating out of the goodness of their hearts for the demolition of parts of the White House in order to build Donald Trump's ballroom. And Trump says that they're doing a lot of things. Not only are they doing ballrooms, they're going to be doing arcs or arch. I don't know what he's talking about. Take a listen to this.
Well as you, Mr. Dell, about contributing. Can you walk us through maybe who you've been talking to and how much more we can expect on top of
I think the people you probably would think I would be talking to. There's a group of people out there that have been very successful, and we've already started talking to them. You know, we're doing ballrooms, we're doing arcs, we have a thing that's being planned that's going to be a great tribute to the country, as you know. You probably heard about it. The arc that we're looking at by the bridge near Arlington, there's going to be something. We're doing some other things for Washington itself and for the country itself. But a lot of the people that have, gone in and done a real job with that. The ballroom, I think Michael and Susan, the next time we meet, well, I think hopefully we'll meet before then, but we're going to have a big event over at the ballroom to celebrate this. We're building a ballroom that they've wanted at this beautiful White House for 150 years. They've wanted it so badly. Right now we can hold 109 people if you're lucky in a room. It's a beautiful room, but it's 109 people, and we're building something. You see the trucks in the back. You see the clanging, the banging, and when it's completed, it'll be one of the greatest ballrooms anywhere in the world. It's going to be amazing. So people that were involved in that process, I have a lot of friends with a lot of success, and every one of them, I would be shocked if anyone turns us down. We're going to have a lot of big contributors, Jeff.
Does anyone in my audience, even if you are a MAGA, believe that these projects are on the up and up? And I've got to commend, I don't normally take this show as an opportunity to just praise MAGA people, but there are some MAGA people I want to praise. I am hearing more regularly than ever from people who write to me and they say, you know, David, I'm not a person of the left. I don't really agree with the left's view on tax policy. I don't really agree with the left's view on a lot of social issues even. But the level of corruption, grifting, self-dealing that this president is involved in, I cannot support it. And this is what suggests to me that the opportunity to really unite to the extent that unity is possible against this MAGA movement is not about convincing right-wingers that we should be taxing the rich more, even though, by the way, that's a pretty popular position, but many of them don't agree with it. We are not going to find unity by convincing right-wingers on issues of, trans or LGBT. Like, that's not what it's going to be. It is going to be, listen, everything is at stake with this level of corruption going without consequences, I think is the way that I will say it. And if and when we can remove such a brazenly corrupt administration and movement that is MAGA, then we can get back to figuring out what should the top tax rate be? What should we do about issues of transports or foreign policy or whatever? And I want to really commend, it's not a lot of them, but I am hearing from more and more MAGAs who are writing to me and saying, I can't in good conscience support this grift, this corrupt grift anymore. And it's this sort of stuff that is making them feel that way. A reporter brought up to Trump, you pardoned the former president of Honduras. Seems like it is at odds with now going after alleged narco traffickers connected to Venezuela, when on the other hand, if you really cared about drug trafficking, you wouldn't have pardoned the Honduran president. Trump goes, no. That was a Biden witch hunt. Take a look.
I did.
You also pardoned the former president of Honduras, and he was released from prison
I
yesterday.
did. Well, he was the president, and they had some drugs being sold in their country, and because he was the president, they went after him. That was a Biden horrible witch hunt, which was, a lot of people in Honduras asked me to do that, and I did it. I feel very good about it. If you have some drug dealers in your country and you're the president, you don't necessarily put the president in jail for 45 years. That was a Biden-inspired witch hunt.
Did his letter impact your decision on that, sir?
Donald Trump many times has called for the death penalty for drug dealers. When he was a candidate, he said they should get the death penalty. And now Trump is pardoning someone convicted of narco trafficking. But there's an incredible detail here. You know who prosecuted that case, which Donald Trump has now issued a pardon for? The Biden witch hunt case? It was a guy named Emile Beauvais. That name might ring a bell because Donald Trump made Emile Beauvais a judge on a court of appeals federally. Sounds like Trump was really disgusted with that prosecution, right? Remember that it is all grift. It is all grift. Trump on policy proposals saying, we're looking at programs to raise the birth rate like what Australia did.
Were originally discussed as a way to incentivize people to have more children. Are there any other policy proposals you're looking at like this to encourage the birth rate to increase?
Well, we are looking at programs. We're looking at, there's a certain Australian plan that people are liking and they're talking about. You know what I mean? There's a plan where, not for children necessarily, but it's for people, working people. And we are looking at other things different from this. I think this is very unique, but different from this, but very important, yeah.
You mean the Australian retirement savings?
Now, as if you couldn't tell from that deranged word salad, Trump doesn't know what Australia did. He seems to have no idea what Australia is doing. But I'll tell you what Australia is doing to try to increase the birth rate. Number one, they've increased the subsidy for what's called the child care subsidy. They've increased the amount of money, and they've removed the annual cap on the amount families can claim. Republicans are against that sort of thing. They've done direct cash incentives called the baby bonus. Trump said he might be up for that. They've set up, this is so critical, Australia set up a parental leave and family payment structure, okay? Over decades, Australia has expanded the financial support for families through family benefits and per-child payments. Republicans hate that crap. They don't want paid parental leave. They don't want any of it. So the current thinking is that everything Donald Trump is saying we should be looking at is stuff that Republicans have said they are against. Does Donald Trump really even understand what's going on with the birth rate? Does Donald Trump understand what Australia is doing? Of course not. But he delivered a word salad so impenetrable that everybody around him froze. Question: do you think Republicans really care about the declining birth rate? Or is it just a proxy to some other grift that they've come up with? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you. Holiday hosting can
walk us through these images and what they show.
Well, Chris, we're talking about 10 photos and 4 videos, and they depict Epstein's home on the private island in the Virgin Islands where he lived for many years and where his accusers say he trafficked women and girls. What it says about the Epstein case is unclear to me. It's not clear that it sheds any new light on anything that happened there. There's some very strange photos. One that shows a room with masks of men on the walls. It looks like a dentist's office. But again, unclear what this all means. And it's fair to note that the Democrats who are pushing for all this disclosure and transparency were not doing this during the Biden administration when the Biden Justice Department had control of these files. But they are now pushing the Trump Justice Department. There's a law that's been passed. The Justice Department is obligated to release all the files that it can on the Epstein matter, even though investigators have been telling us for years there is nothing left in those files that suggest chargeable offenses by other men. But both members of both parties are pressing for these disclosures, and this is the latest today, Chris.
So, Lisa, I want to read a statement from the Democrats because they believe it's important that this came out. Quote, "These new images are a disturbing look into the world of Jeffrey Epstein and his island. We are releasing these photos and videos to ensure public transparency in our investigation and to help piece together the full picture of Epstein's horrific crimes. We won't stop fighting until we deliver justice for the survivors." There had been allegations that Epstein was trafficking girls to the island as late as 2018. In her book, late victim Virginia Giuffre says Epstein preferred the girls to be naked on the island, but now legally, or maybe in the court of public opinion, are they important?
Look, this is definitely for some people the first glimpse that they will have inside the island. We have seen drone and satellite taken photography of the island before. We've seen pictures that were taken much further away, but we are now seeing sort of in vivid color what survivors like Virginia Giuffre have described. For example, Chris, in her book, Nobody's Girl, that came out earlier this fall, Virginia talks about what Little St. James looked like to her. She says it was surrounded by crystalline turquoise water, had 3 private beaches, and had been enhanced with 2 swimming pools, a helipad, and its own desalination system. But then she talks about the buildings. In addition to the blue-roofed main residence, there were guest cottages painted in cheerful Caribbean colors. There was a sundial, which we see in some of these pictures as big as a horse paddock, and a dock where his powerboat bobbed under a thatched roof. And he had built several gazebos for massages and, as Virginia knows, whatever else he required. Were it not for what went on there, the place would have been paradise. So part of what this helps us see is just sort of insight, a glimpse into the survivors' world. As painful as these pictures and images must be for some of them to see today, it helps the public really have a fuller sense of where these crimes transpired. The folks that were trafficked to this so-called Epstein Island, or what some have called Pedophile Island, we are now seeing for the first time, just as we had with the townhouse before it and the house in Palm Beach, now we are seeing where much of this may have occurred.
What went through my mind as I was watching some of the exterior video, and you see the expansive grounds, and you see the water, the beautiful water that Virginia Giuffre describes. If you're a teenager, if you're a young woman, if you are taken, as we know Ghislaine Maxwell did, if you are taken out of difficult personal circumstances, not just maybe out of the country where you've never been before, but to a place, beautiful, big staff, private chef, what must the psychological impact of that be?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that part of what was enticing to the survivors was the veneer of glamour surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. And I say the veneer because we know how quickly that situation turned monstrous and inescapable for so many of the survivors. But certainly, this looks like a luxury resort. And indeed, in 2023, the property was purchased by an investment company with the goal of turning it into a resort property. But the other thing that strikes me, and again, putting on the hat of being a survivor, is how isolated it was. We saw in one of these 14 pictures a no trespassing sign. You can also see that there aren't any other land masses in close proximity. So if you are a victim who has been brought to this very beautiful place, you're not seeing its beauty. All you are seeing is the danger there for you and how isolated totally and completely you are from anyone who can help get you off of this island.
There's the no trespassing sign, and Virginia Giuffre, again in her book, describes standing and having what might seem like otherwise a normal conversation with the private chef.
Yes.
But she has no clothes on, which is, again, what she said that he preferred. In the meantime, Kevin, a group of lawmakers is now pushing Attorney General Pam Bondi for a status update on releasing the Epstein files. What can you tell us?
Yeah, and keep in mind, this comes, of course, as we are now just essentially 2.5 weeks away from that kind of 30-day deadline that was spelled out as part of the resolution passed by Congress in overwhelming fashion, where they need to have these files out in the open. So this bipartisan cohort of lawmakers, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans, both sides of Capitol Hill, reaching out to Pam Bondi saying, one, we want an update on what's going on with the release of these files, but we also, they say, would like to learn more about these recent investigations and steps you all have announced when it comes to his ties to various Democrats and financial institutions, saying we need to know more details about what new information was found to justify taking that steps, because there is a concern amongst lawmakers that those announcements in recent months would only hold back or lead the DOJ to try to make the case that they can hold back material that might otherwise be made public because it would be part of an investigation. So they're giving Pam Bondi a deadline of Friday to get this sort of briefing, and that's when they want more information about where things stand, either in a public or private sort of setting.
And Ken, the committee also said it had received records from J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank that will be released in the upcoming days. How does that all fit in?
Your membership is more.
How Jeffrey Epstein made his money, whether he had ties to intelligence agencies, did he have leverage over wealthy individuals with whom he was doing business? And these banking records could shed some light on that. Again, all adding up to how this plays in the court of public opinion, because investigators have been saying for years that every crime they could have charged out of these cases, they charged. Chris.
He had a lifestyle that even wealthy people may not be able to imagine when you talk about the private jets and you talk about the amounts of money that were regularly doled out to these victims by Ghislaine Maxwell, given cash, and the ability to trace that. But again, when I go back to the court of public opinion and I'm looking at the interior, we talked about the exterior, I'm looking at the interior and I'm thinking, who doesn't have a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old girl in their life? Relative, friends, kid, whatever. And a man is taking your daughter, your niece, your kid's acquaintance to that?
Yeah, it's profoundly disturbing to me because I've heard in recent months, Chris, on other channels, not our own, people talking about how when we're talking about the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell cases, we're talking about girls who were as old as 14, 15, 16, and somehow differentiating that from young children. You and I talk frequently about the fact that I'm a parent of one tween and one teenage girl. When I look at this, that's all I see is somebody's child was trapped there. Somebody's child may have gone there under the pretense of a vacation that became something very quickly completely other than that. Somebody's child has written a book that makes it very clear that folks walked around regularly naked, even when they were interacting with household staff, that there were multiple cabanas on the property to afford some form of privacy for the quote-unquote massages, which are really, thinly veiled sexual encounters with Epstein and others in his orbit. And those are people's children, and they were, in fact, children. And I am appreciative of the fact that you keep underscoring that these were children, because at 14, 15, 16 years old, on this island, I don't care how many swimming pools or private beaches there are, this was nothing but a house of horrors for the Epstein survivors.
And it speaks to the power of power and money, because everybody seemed to be talking about it. They had nicknames for this place, and yet it went on and on and on. Lisa Rubin, Kevin Fry, Ken Delanian, thank you.
Drug boat, and what President Trump is now saying tonight about releasing video of the second strike. It comes amid growing pressure on Secretary Pete Hegseth. Martha Raddatz standing by with what she's learned about that second strike. As sources tell ABC News, the Pentagon's Inspector General has found Secretary Hegseth put American troops at risk. Hegseth using the commercial app, the Signal messaging app, to share sensitive information about a previous military strike. Tonight, the dangerous, life-threatening cold sweeping in across much of this country. Records will be set in several states, temperatures and wind chills well below zero. And from New York City to Boston, bracing for bone-chilling winds, Lee Goldberg is here. Tonight, breaking news, President Trump's immigration crackdown unfolding right now. Federal agents in New Orleans and agents moving in Minnesota at this hour, reportedly targeting Somali immigrants. The raids there come amid a major fraud investigation. Tonight, actor Matthew Perry's mother face-to-face with the doctor who supplied Matthew Perry with ketamine, what she told him in court, and then the sentence. Tonight, the Jeffrey Epstein case video and images from Jeffrey Epstein's island inside his mansion, the room with a dentist chair and masks on the wall. Outside Boston tonight, the chilling evidence in a gruesome murder trial, a husband accused of murdering his wife and mother of three, dismembering her body. One of the alleged motives, a $2.7 million insurance policy. The growing concern tonight over self-driving taxis in this country. In one city alone, racing past school buses picking up children, their stop sign out. A company responding to ABC News tonight. This evening, an F-16 crashing during a Thunderbirds training mission gone wrong, the jet bursting into smoke and flames. The liquor store break-in, bottles smashed on the floor, the suspect, a raccoon found drunk at the scene. Yes, a raccoon. At America Strong tonight, we remember the movie National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, that scene with the Christmas lights. You're not going to believe our story tonight.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. We begin tonight here with breaking news. What ABC News has just learned tonight about that second deadly strike on that alleged drug boat from Venezuela. And President Trump tonight and what he's now saying about releasing video of the second strike. It comes amid growing scrutiny surrounding Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And on a separate front tonight, sources now telling ABC News the Pentagon Inspector General has found Secretary Hegseth put U.S. military personnel and their mission at risk by discussing sensitive information in a group chat using a commercial app, the Signal messaging app, about another operation. Martha Raddatz leading us off tonight with late reporting here.
Tonight, the controversy swirling around Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth expanding. Sources tell ABC News the Pentagon's independent watchdog has found Hegseth endangered the lives of American troops by using the commercial messaging app Signal to share highly sensitive plans for military strikes on Yemen with administration colleagues, his wife, who is not a government employee, and a reporter who was accidentally added to a group chat. At the time, Hegseth insisted he'd done nothing wrong.
Nobody was texting war plans.
He blamed former employees. He blamed the media.
They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me.
But the Pentagon Inspector General's new report has, according to sources, determined that if the information Hegseth shared on Signal had fallen into enemy hands, American troops could have been in danger, and that it should not have been sent on the unsecure messaging app. According to sources, Hegseth refused to sit down with the Inspector General, instead providing a statement saying he'd acted within his rights because he has the power to classify and declassify information. Today, a Pentagon spokesman called the report a total exoneration, and the White House said President Trump stands behind Secretary Hegseth. But the report is the latest blow to the embattled secretary, who had spent days trying to explain this September attack on a suspected drug boat off the coast of Venezuela. After this first strike, a second missile was fired, reportedly targeting 2 survivors. International law prohibits killing enemy combatants who no longer pose a threat. The day after the attack, Hegseth said he watched it happen.
I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing.
Now, he claims he only watched the first strike.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire, smoke, you can't see anything, you got digital. This is called the fog of war.
The secretary insists he wasn't the one who ordered the second strike, instead pointing the finger at the mission's commander, Admiral Mitch Bradley. Tonight, ABC's Selena Wang asking President Trump if he will release the video of the second strike.
Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves what happened?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem.
So we've seen the video of the first strike, but that second strike video that the president said would be released will be key. And tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the 2 survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice. So again, David, that video will be key, and Admiral Bradley will be on the Hill tomorrow behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors. Martha Raddatz leading us off tonight. Martha, thank you. Meantime, tonight.
To start a podcast with Riverside, all you need is a concept and a way to record it. Here's how it works. First, go to Riverside.
The dangerous and life-threatening cold sweeping in across much of the U.S. tonight. Records will be set in several states. Temperatures and wind chills well below zero. And from New York City to Boston, millions now bracing for bone-chilling winds. Lee Goldberg standing by with the forecast, and Alex Perez with the images coming in tonight.
Tonight, millions bracing for bone-chilling cold after that powerful nor'easter turned roads to ice rinks all over the Northeast.
It's a slip and slide.
Just north of New York City, an out-of-control plow truck slamming a car into the back of a school bus in Monroe, New York. Thankfully, no one was hurt. On Interstate 71 in Cincinnati, watch as these cars fishtail and crash on black ice, other vehicles slowing down just in time. Outside Boston and Seekonk, Massachusetts, this cruiser mangled after hydroplaning and flipping several times. The officer inside was injured. In Nashua, New Hampshire, Marcus Gordon says even his four-wheel drive was no match for the slick roads.
The roads were already wet, and then the snow just came up on top of it, so you can't really see the black ice.
And now the coldest air of the season moving in, icy conditions sure to be a problem in the days ahead. And David, here in Minneapolis, the temperature is tumbling. By tomorrow morning, the actual temperature will be 4 below zero, and it will feel like 15 below zero. David?
We knew it had to come. Alex Perez. Alex, thank you. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from WABC here in New York. Hey, Lee.
Hey, David, December just not messing around. The coldest air of the season is pouring into the upper Midwest tonight. We'll wake up to sub-zero temperatures in Minneapolis and Sioux Falls, maybe a record in Des Moines. By Friday, that record cold is pushing into the east, which could bring snow showers tomorrow into the northeast. It'll be in the teens in New York and into Philly, and probably feel like it's zero in Boston. We can see those winds that'll be gusting 35, 40 miles an hour, then calm down on Friday, but sub-zero wind chills in northern New England. Then as we look at the south, it's a new storm, heavy rain from Houston to New Orleans. David?
Lee Goldberg with us tonight on the forecast. Lee, we appreciate it. We turn now to this new turn in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Rare video and images right here tonight from Jeffrey Epstein's island. Inside his mansion, the room with a dentist chair and masks on the wall. You'll remember President Trump signed that bill into law, 30 days to release the files, with 2 weeks now left. Here's our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, a rare look at Jeffrey Epstein's private Caribbean island, where he allegedly exploited dozens of young women and girls. Video of the secluded hideaway shows the grounds, the pool, the view, along with interior images of a bedroom and bathroom and a room with a dental chair and face masks of men tacked to the wall. House Democrats releasing these images today as they pressure the Trump administration to release all of the Epstein files, joining a chorus of Epstein's accusers.
We're ready for the next step, and we're ready to finally release the files. All the files.
Congress passed and President Trump signed a law requiring the Justice Department to release the records within 30 days. There are just 2 weeks left. But tonight, a potential obstacle. An attorney for Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, said today she'll soon file a petition challenging her sex trafficking conviction. Maxwell is expected to file her petition at this courthouse, David, and the Justice Department could try to use it as a reason to withhold certain files in the event Maxwell is granted a new trial. However unlikely that may be. David?
Aaron Katursky with us again tonight. Aaron, thank you. There are also breaking developments involving President Trump's immigration crackdown now unfolding in 2 parts of the country tonight. Federal agents now in New Orleans and agents moving into Minnesota at this hour, reportedly targeting Somali immigrants. The raids there come amid a major fraud investigation involving members of the Somali community. Here's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, the Trump administration expanding its deportation efforts. Federal agents now hitting the streets of New Orleans. And in Minnesota, ICE now targeting the Somali community as the president doubles down on his attacks.
That beautiful land, that beautiful state, it's a hellhole right now. And the Somalians should be out of here. They've destroyed our country. And all they do is complain, complain, complain.
The president calling Somali immigrants, quote, garbage.
We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country.
It comes as House Republicans launch an investigation into widespread COVID-era fraud involving some members of Minnesota's large Somali community. The New York Times reports 59 people have been convicted in schemes involving more than $1 billion in stolen taxpayer money that was supposed to go to children and other social services. President Trump seizing on this story as he widens his immigration crackdown. But Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry defending the Somali community.
He's wrong, and we want them here. Somali people have been an extraordinary benefit.
And again, David, tonight we are told that ICE operations are now underway in Minnesota. Sources describe this as a targeted enforcement operation going after immigrants with final deportation orders. David?
Mary Bruce with us tonight as well. Thanks, Mary. Now to the Matthew Perry case and an emotional moment in court in Los Angeles today. The actor's mother face-to-face with the doctor who supplied Matthew Perry with ketamine. What she told him in court and then the sentence. Here's Trevor Ault.
Tonight, the doctor who sold ketamine to Friends star Matthew Perry leading up to his overdose death was face to face with the actor's family as they described their heartache. Dr. Salvador Plasencia, sentenced to 30 months in prison for selling dozens of vials of ketamine to Perry in exchange for tens of thousands of dollars. Plasencia cried and nodded in agreement as Perry's family accused him of betraying his Hippocratic oath. Perry's sister saying, instead of protecting him, you exploited him. And his mother standing before Plasencia saying, I just want you to see his mother. This is his mother. In a statement, the family says no one alive and in touch with the world at all could have been unaware of Matthew's struggles, pointing to that cruel text Plasencia sent to another doctor supplying the